if you asked me, when's your birthday? And I said, oh, my birthday. Fuck. Every summer we go out to like the countryside and we celebrate it over there. Like June 16th is just such a wonderful day to like go out and enjoy the sun. It's just such a perfect time of year. And then you went, how can you say you answered the question when you said all this shit about the countryside in summertime? Like, no, I did answer the question because I explicitly said in there what it was. Like, you know, you choosing to like look at the ratio of like what you felt was relevant versus what was irrelevant is irrelevant.
Okay, so something that I don't know what to do is are you familiar with the term or with the phrase gish gallop?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know how to when I have a moderated debate, he's just going off. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. If I let him ramble, especially because he's speaking more to the audience than to me, and he's moralizing everything. So like basically every time he starts talking, it's like, well, I'm going to tell you about the evil that exists in society today and how your system is, and we're not like, I don't think we actually got anywhere in any part of our conversation in any of this. Like, I don't think we moved more than one level down on any time we were up. I don't know what you're supposed to do in that.
It's interesting that your takeaway was that like those were the issues because I felt that you knew that you couldn't interrupt. Like I think you were well aware of the optics of that, so you avoided it for the most part until the end. And in the end, it was the back and forth that you asked to happen in the very beginning, so you were in your element there.
I'm not worried about like being in my element or whatever. I just wanted to actually get anywhere in the conversation, and I don't think we did on anything. Because every time I would try to get an answer from him so that we could move back and forth on a point, it would be another 2-minute diatribe. It was driving me fucking crazy.
The unfortunate thing is he gives you explicit answers mixed in those long questions or the long answers that he gives, and you completely miss them.
An explicit answer mixed in with a bunch of bullshit becomes not explicit, right?
I mean, if you want to play pedantic games, you could, but he does give explicit answers inside of those. If you want to say it's not explicit anymore because it was surrounded by a bunch of other stuff, that's fine by me. But it doesn't change the fact that he gave you answers to your questions. You had to be listening for them.
So if we go back to his 3 definitions of socialism, my first problem is that for the first one is capitalism. And the third one, I'm still not entirely sure if that even has anything to do with economics. I don't think we ever even got to go back and forth on that.
No.
Like, I think I used a phrase several times that he got upset at where I would call it worker managed. And he would say, I never said anything about worker managed. But then he would go on, like, I think 10 seconds later to say, like, a workplace that's like democratically voted on. And I think he even used the word managed by the workers.
Then there's a third kind, which I stressed a few moments ago, which is not about the government. Doesn't care all that much whether the government runs an enterprise or the private does. They can figure out whichever one works better. Let's be real practical. But for them, what socialism means is the transformation of the everyday life of working people. For these socialists, like me, the crucial thing is to reorganize the workplace, to bring real democracy, can you believe it, to the place where we work. The workers make the key decisions. They are their own board of directors. One of the fastest growing industries in Spain is something called the Mondragon Cooperative Corporation. It's a family of worker co-ops.
They're not even worker managed, though. I don't know. This isn't even a good...
I never used the phrase worker management. Managers are not what we're talking about. Owning and operating. If you want to use a word, it's workers as their own boss, workers as their own board of directors.
The very first problem of the debate, like the first blunder I felt like from you, was focusing on that definition number 1. If you didn't think the definition number 1 lined up with what you thought socialism to be, and he gave you 3 different options and said the third one is the one that I believe in, I was surprised that you chose to focus in on number 1 rather than focus in on number 2 and 3, which you yourself admitted are the only ones that could answer your 5 questions and move the conversation forward.
But the problem is that that's explicitly what I'm trying to avoid. Well, I don't know if we ever had to establish this in the conversation, but socialists impugn capitalists. So I'm not going to let him give me a definition of socialism that includes capitalism and then only try to skirt around like the third most hardcore definition that he gave while he's already like encompassed the majority of like social democracy under his first definition. Like, I feel like that we have to iron it out right there, because I understand that he's got like 3 different definitions, but between the 3, it's so broad. He's already encompassed like 95% of liberal ideology.
How much did you want to have those 5 questions answered? Because I feel like that's what you wanted to do here.
I wanted them answered quite a bit, but I don't want, but we never got back and forth on anything. Every time I asked for a question, we started talking about like feudalism and like, I don't know, like I don't know. I was just incredibly unsatisfied. You might want to argue that there are things that I could have done maybe to navigate the conversation better, but you're essentially asking me that, like, given like a child, like, can you get a correct answer out? And I think it's possible, but holy fuck, it was so incredibly difficult.
You wanted those 5 questions answered. You said in the debate, hey, so you're giving me 3 definitions. 2 and 3 would seem to be able to answer my 5 questions. I'm interested in talking about that. However, here's this question about number 1. And then you toss the mic back over to him to answer about the one thing that had no potential to answer any of your 5 questions.
I understand. I can't get to the 5 questions because my 5 questions have to do with people that ardently defend the concept of socialism. But I'm not even sure what he thinks socialism or capitalism is.
How? He gave you 3 definitions.
Yeah, but those 3 are completely contradictory. Like 1 precludes 3, 3 precludes 1.
They disagree with each other. That was part of the narrative that he explained to you, that these are the 3 conflicting ideas about socialism right now. If I could group them into groups, that would be helpful for us. There's some that don't fit in this or whatever, but here they are.
Sure, and at some point I realized that it's pointless to go down this road of like defining all of these. So then I try to get an answer for, well, what do you think capitalism is then? And I can't even get an answer for that.
You did get an answer for that.
What does he think that capitalism is? Can you tell me?
Yes. He says that capitalism involves a relationship between an employer and an employee that is sealed by a contract.
Capitalism. It's not a master and a slave. It's not a lord and a serf. It's a completely different arrangement. It's a contract. It's an employer and an employee. They don't swear anything to one another, and neither owns the other one. But they enter into a contract in which the employer says, I'm going to give you a wage at the end of the week. You're going to give me your brains and muscles for these hours of these days, and that's a deal we're going to make, and that's how we organize production.
That's not that has nothing to do with I don't know what the fuck that means.
Well, like, you not knowing what it means is very different from him not having given you a definition, just to be clear.
Hold on. My bad. 2021 Destiny, rhetoric, okay? That definition is fucking wrong, okay? That's not what capitalism is. That definition is so unbelievably vague. It could describe an internship. It could describe a like employee-employee relationship at like a capitalist firm. You could use it to describe indentured servitude. Like that doesn't mean anything. An employer and an employee, I don't know, that means nothing. That's not what capitalism is.
It would have been interesting if you would have made some kind of argument around that definition, which you kind of do later when you mention markets. But you didn't, because then you asked the question again. I think my main advice to you here is you should probably be more flexible in accepting answers that don't fit into your preconceived notions of what they ought to be. Like,
but that's part of what the whole that's part of what the whole conversation is about. This is the frustrating thing, is that like, and I guess we never really actually get to frame anything this way, because the conversation never makes progress anywhere. But it's not fair for my issue coming into this, the reason why I went on my whole tirade on Twitter, is because socialists will impugn liberals constantly. But anytime I talk to a socialist, they don't know what the fuck socialism is. Most of them don't know what capitalism is. Most of them seem like they are kind of liberals. Like people say, oh, I'm a socialist. I want to be a socialist like they are in Denmark and Sweden. People in Sweden and Denmark don't consider themselves socialists. It's not true. So like when I ask him, well, what is socialism to you? And I go, well, here are the 3 answers of okay, well, what the fuck is capitalism? That's when there's an employee and an employer. Like, oh, okay. We literally have nothing to argue about. Like, I don't even know what the fuck I'm here for at this point. Like, this isn't an argument over anything. Like, and I'm pretty sure when I try to get like more specific answers, like, well, okay, well, that's not capital. Like, I just get more lectures.
You're really plastering over a lot by just calling them lectures. If I was to put what you're saying in the most good way possible, and I've heard you say this before, like when we talked about Vosh, and you were like, he's not even answering my question. I'm like, well, he did. He gave you good answers, and he explained what his position was. And you're like, but do you realize how unsatisfying that is?
Do you really still not understand his argument, though?
I think I understand. I think what he says he's saying, I don't truly believe that he believes it. There is absolutely no difference in the real world between like a socialist and a capitalist living in a capitalist system.
but he would hope that they do better.
Oh my god, that's such a... Why do you say that?
Because that's what he says.
But that doesn't mean anything.
Yes, that's like consistent with the positions he put forward, right?
Yeah, I guess, but deeply unsatisfying to me, and I think how a lot of people view these kind of statements, but sure.
Yeah, it's unsatisfying to you, but that doesn't mean it wasn't an answer or that they weren't telling the truth or they dodged out of questions. Like, it's just that what they believe is unsatisfactory to you.
So I needed to more pointedly tell him at the end of every answer that he was incorrect and that he needed to be more specific? Is that what I should have said, or?
So I would start by like, okay, so you're saying that capitalism revolves around the employer-employee relationship that's like kind of sealed with a contract or a pact in a similar way to feudalism being between lords
I think
and
I
serfs.
tried to rephrase him a couple times, and every single time I did, he was like, no, that's not the case. No, that's not the case. No, that's not the case.
So what you said, and I have a quote because I expected that you would say this, you immediately responded with,
You haven't given me a definition of capitalism at all. You've told me a bunch of things that capitalism isn't, and then you've given me a bunch of random collected facts of history.
You don't do a very good job of like breaking it apart and going, you're saying that an employer-employee relationship is the defining feature of capitalism. Then what about X, Y, and Z that have those, but I would consider them to be socialism or feudalism or anything else? Like that would have been a productive way forward, but you don't do that. You disregard the entire thing and you just say that he didn't give you an answer, which is not the truth. Your inflexibility in confronting his answers leads to you like derailing the conversation, unfortunately.
I guess I just expected like more like understanding and conciseness from somebody that's supposedly like a professor of econ, like, and not like such a garbled, gumbled like mess of shit, I guess. But maybe my expectations were too high. Maybe I should have treated him like a child, or...
Well, if you want to be, super reductive about it, you can, but like, I don't think that's a fair way to characterize him. Because while you think that the responses were like too long, which I agree with, it's not like it was a bunch of unrelated gobbledygook. Like they were things that were setting up parallels so you could better understand his final answer.
Nothing that was said was needed to expand upon or to give like any answer they had at all, though. That's the whole reason why all the background stuff is just garbled. Yeah,
I would argue it would have helped, but it sounds like you just didn't listen to any of it, which is unfortunate.
If you have a good understanding of something and you're a good interlocutor, if I'm having a super hard trouble grasping any of your answers, the problem is on you. The problem is not on me at that point. I think I do a decent job at listening. I was taking notes during the entire conversation. If we're having this much trouble getting through the conversation, especially when this guy is supposedly a professor, it shouldn't be that hard for me to understand exactly what's going on, especially when there are like concrete moments where he says dumb shit and then he has to back off it later. Or I don't know. I reject that idea that like, oh, I just needed to be trying way, way, way harder. And it was all my fault for not like trying hard to understand or whatever. If anything, I feel like I should have reframed things more aggressively. But
so to be fair to you, I'm not putting this wholly on you. I spent a good part of the review shitting on him for being long-winded and not putting his explicit answer at the very, very, very beginning.
I don't like the phrase of long-winded. It's more than just being long-winded. It's obfuscating. It's dancing. It's giving concealment to your position, and it's making it hard to further the conversation.
That's completely bad faith, because these are all parallels.
It's not bad faith.
Where do you feel
there's no parallels? I still don't know 100%. I don't even know what the fuck his third definition of socialism means. Like, you want a society where, like, I think I say everything is co-ops, and this is not everything, but right now we have, like, a lot of capitalism and a little bit of co-ops, and I want, like, a lot of co-ops and a little bit of the other stuff. What's different from your vision than what we have today?
Well, what we have today is predominantly capitalist with smatterings of the other. I'm interested in having predominantly socialist with smatterings of the other.
What the fuck does that even mean? Like, what does that even mean? Like, these answers are so unbelievably fucking stupid. I would cringe if I responded to a question like this.
And that's fine. Like, he's not well suited to this. He's used to being...
No.
Like, hold on. I'll stop because I've seen you, like, scream at people about this. Sure, he needs to work on this. Like, that is very clear.
He's a debater.
Yes, I've heard you talk with other people, so I'll avoid this landmine with you. But it just sucks to see you focus on the other person so much when there are clearly things that you could work on here. And I think that you're going to get more out of like trying to improve yourself than like expecting more of other people, because that's outside of your control.
I need a more aggressive moderator. I should have been cutting him off the whole time. I should have said, Wolf, shut the fuck up.
Why was Surfs the moderator?
Because he's the one that put the debate together.
Ah, okay. That's what I figured. A good moderator would have helped there.
There was a time when he answered a question and he didn't even remember what the fucking question was. Wait, what was the original question?
We were asking how we react to that inequality.
No. The question was why. I asked you, why do you think Bezos is compensated so much more than like a frontline employee? Do you think that the demand for those talents is equal?
That Q&A, really, really bad. Totally agree with you there. But I don't think you can apply that same thing to like the definitions of socialism question, because he gave an answer there and you actually missed it because you start attributing positions to him that are incorrect, or you just say, I still don't know what you believe about socialism when he told you. And then he has to spend time reiterating what he said the first time because you didn't listen.
So I guess what I should have said is I need you to actually give me a real answer instead of rambling like a dipshit. I should have said, on number 3, can you give me like precise mechanisms by which you would enact this world? Because you have literally talked for 3 minutes and said, fuck all, professor. That's what I should have said.
Sure, but that's a very different question, Stephen. That's a very, very different question than what is your definition
I
of
guess
socialism, which he gave
I would assume that in the course of a debate, you would be giving actual answers and material for your opponent to grapple with. You wouldn't just be saying, well, socialism on number 3 is when the workers live happy lives and plant flowers and they have more control over the workplace. What the fuck does that mean? Does that mean we all take a poll every like 3 hours, like to see what we want to eat for lunch? Like,
if you're interested in what democracy in the workplace looks like, you could have asked that, but you didn't. You said he didn't give you an answer to your question, and you continued by inserting your own definition for that, or attributing definition number 1 to him, which is just completely false.
I've been blackpilled on the academia shit. I will no longer assume any of these people have any level of education. When I ask a question,
I'm
what is
sad to hear
socialism?
that because there's so much you can improve on, and if that's your takeaway, you're just being ignorant about the conversation.
If I'm talking to somebody that's educated and I ask you what socialism is, and you give me the garbage answers this guy gives you, I assume that you're some undergrad that read 2 pages of Capital and then spent the rest of his evening on Twitter. Because nothing that he says has any substance. There's nothing that's interesting here. There's nothing that is, to use your word, satisfying here. There's no prescriptions for society. There's no critiques of capitalism. It's literally just a bunch of like that means absolutely nothing.
How can you say that when he gave you an entire history of socialism and explain how those 3 different elements ended up where they were? Like, you just completely didn't
can you
listen
give me
to
one?
him.
Sure. So can you, after all this debate on socialism versus capitalism, can you give me one concrete step that he would want to take towards making socialism a thing?
You didn't ask that, did you?
Okay, can you tell me what he thinks socialism would look like in society? Like one concrete way that it would look in society?
Yeah, that the number of companies that are run by the workers would be greater than the number of companies that are privately owned or that engage in an employer-employee relationship.
And what does he mean when he says that? Like number of companies run by workers? Because he doesn't mean worker-owned or worker-managed, I guess. Because I said that a few times, and
he doesn't care about who owns it, which he said in the definition of number 3, which you missed because you didn't care about it or it was unsatisfactory to you.
I don't know what it means for the workers to manage something if they don't own it. But
you could have asked him a question about that, but you didn't.
I guess so. We should have started back on. We should have went on page 1. What is economics to you? What does the word economy mean? It
makes me sad to see you jump to those kinds of like, oh, I should have treated him like an 8-year-old, or oh, well then we should have fucking did economics. Like, it feels like you just like give up in the conversation with me when you're doing stuff like that, which is unfortunate because there's like stuff you could improve on here, but you're like running away from it. My main thing is to like help you improve or to like see blind spots, you know? So that's where I'm focusing. And I just think this is a big blind spot. And I actually think you might be able to enjoy more conversations with different people that answer in different ways if you're just more flexible and understanding of answers that don't fit within your like preconceived notion of what they should be.
It's not about it being preconceived. It's that his answers fit every possible thought that I had.
Yeah, it's almost like he's like in your head and he's answering perfectly, but not everybody's going to be like that. I don't have to tell you that.
He's not in my head answering perfect. It's like you asked me like, well, what is capitalism? Well, that's when there's employees and employers. All right, let's debate on what's better. Like, what the fuck? I don't know what the fuck. Okay, listen.
And you didn't even catch that definition. So like that would have been a better version of Stephen than I saw in this debate.
Well, I don't even know what I responded to that because Christ, talk about fucking ambushing somebody with the craziest dumb fuck answers in the world. What did I even respond to that when he said that?
Let me see.
I don't know if you wrote that one down.
Yeah, I did. That's what I already told you, but you already don't remember. It would have been interesting if you would have made some kind of argument around that definition, which you kind of do later when you mention markets. But you didn't, because then you asked the question again.
I think I tried to rephrase him a couple times, and every single time I did, he was like, no, that's not the case. No, that's not the case. No, that's not the case.
Didn't. So what you said, and I have a quote because I expected that you would say this. You said, no, it's not. You have not given me a definition of capitalism at all. You've told me a bunch of things, yada, yada, yada.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's fair. It's not a definition of capitalism. An employer and an employee. Should I have said saying that there's an employer and employee is not a definition of capitalism? Did I need to explicitly repeat his answer back to him?
I think anything would be better than saying you haven't answered my question when he gave you an answer to the question.
Because he didn't.
Stephen, he did. He gave you an answer. You just disagree with it. So you need to figure out what parts of it you disagree with. What is the difference between your belief and his belief?
So then, I should have repeated.
It's not narrow. That's narrow expectation of what the answer should be. And if it's not within those bounds, you say that's not an answer. That's unsatisfactory. You're not answering my question. Rather than looking and seeing how you could build a bridge between where they're at and where you are at.
It's like we're having a discussion on whether or not I'm 32 or 40 years old. And then he says, well, 2 + 2 is 5. And instead of me saying, hold on, 2 + 2 is not 5, you're saying that I need to ask him like, oh, that's really fascinating. Can you tell me like how 2 + 2 = 5 to you?
It's convenient to go to math where the answers are like what they are, but this isn't math.
The answer is what they are for capitalism. It's not that complicated. Stop saying that. What capitalism is not a very complicated thing.
Why at the time would you not have said, I understand, Professor, that you've said that the definition of socialism has evolved since Marx and those thinkers at that time. What I'm interested in is figuring out how we started there and got to your definition now. How do the means of production fit into the definition that you've given me? Because you've explained a relationship between employers, employees, or about them running their own place. But what you haven't done is tell me about how the mode of production fits in there or this or that. Like that would have been much more productive than saying you haven't given me an answer.
Because I think when I ask a question like that, I think it's an invitation to another 3-minute ramble about the relationships between all of the factors of production.
Yeah, like the invitation you gave him when you chose to focus on definition 1 that you thought was like ludicrous and stupid, rather than the
because
2
I didn't
and
know
3,
that
which
asking
fit
someone
in your
just
5 questions.
Because I don't want somebody to be able to claim that capitalism is socialism because it makes my entire argument moot. The debate is supposed to be capitalism versus socialism. He's assumed 90% of my economic system as part of his definition. I've already lost the conversation. He actually converted me to socialism in this debate just by his opening statement.
All right, let me explain this to you. He said, and you completely missed this because you choose not to listen to him, that in the definition 1, those socialist people have accepted that socialism is not possible, that they cannot implement it in the pure way that they're thinking. So they have resigned themselves to use the government as a tool to fix problems that exist in the worker's life, or to make this employer-employee relationship more palatable to people, more fair to the workers. That's already cooked in there, but instead of like taking the nuanced route and hearing him out and figuring out how those variables fit with your understanding of things, you just offhandedly throw away the entire thing, the baby with the bathwater.
Oh, okay. All right, is there anything else?
I mean, there's a lot, but it doesn't seem like you're hearing me out on these.
It's not a matter of me improving on it. I shouldn't have to accept this level of dipshittery in a conversation with somebody this smart. It's wholly unacceptable. Maybe that's me being an elitist as a college dropout or whatever. But like, if I had any comparable conversation, like I would just hang up. I'd be like, it would be like my conversation with Naked 8. We'd scream shut up at each other for 2 minutes, and then I'd hang up and I'd say, this guy has no fucking idea what he's talking about. I don't know why I wasted my fucking time.
I guess the only thing I'm going to ask you is, are you interested in this enough to like watch the review and try and see where you messed up? Or do you just want to assume that you did everything perfectly and that the problem is the moderator and your interlocutor, literally like anybody else but you?
I think you need to take responsibility for the things that you say and do, and you need to be aware that like, oh, like I'm fucking up here and I can do better. I might go through and like rewatch parts of it on my own to see if I like missed like answers or whatever. But like this like treating somebody like they're 2 years old, like he's smarter than this. Like like there's only like so much charitability I can extend without like committing suicide in a conversation. Like this is just unreal to me. Like I've had better educations with undergrads in my community that like very quickly can pick up about socialism actually.
And these are people that choose to be flexible and to operate with you on your style, the way that I do when I talk to you. And I really think that you're just inflexible when people are not giving you satisfactory answers or don't like meet up to what you expect the conversation to be. And I think that's like a huge flaw. And I'm seeing it right now in real time as I'm talking to you. And rather than address that, you want to like escape out of it and blame it on literally anything else. And it's just
I'm not blaming anything on literally anything else. I think that the guy is a shitty interlocutor. That's my takeaway from this. There are probably things that I can do better to engage people like this, but fuck me, why the fuck would I waste my time? I guess unless they're famous or I can like clout chase off of somebody like this. But
I'm happy that you've been trying to improve your rhetoric, but like, man, it's very difficult to bring up to you things where I feel like you could do better. You're not initially like willing to hear me out on stuff, and change only ever happens when you've had time to ponder it on your own. So I'll assume that's the same thing here. And this is solidified for me now talking to you, is because when something's unsatisfactory, you just throw out the entire thing and pretend as if no answer was given to you. And then when I try to point you in that direction, you go, well, they're a fucking 8-year-old. I'm not talking to someone like they're 2, and my moderators suck. You just like flip out instead of like trying to see another way.
The only like super ultra high academic thing I can think of is like music. But like if I was having a conversation with somebody and they were giving me answers that were just so fundamentally wrong, like I would just walk away from the conversation.
But you can't
Just
do
so
that
everyone
every
can relate.
time. And if you stay in a conversation
Yes, I
with
can,
somebody
though.
you want to walk away from, like, it's going to be like this. And I think if you just fix that, you wouldn't have to feel like you're going to throw your hands up and give up. You could have like the tools and the ability that you've honed to actually deal with somebody who's not giving you answers that you feel is satisfactory. And I think that would be better for you in the long run. I love you a lot, dude. I really want to see you, succeed.
Be careful.
You too. I have nothing personally against Denims, but it was very clear in her conversation with him that she has different motives and intentions than what I have in giving a review or giving advice. The fact that I was treated with the same kind of dismissal, was upsetting. And when I saw that in the moment, I thought it was important to highlight that and lean into it and not be rhetoric smarts, or I'm trying to build a rapport with him, or I'm trying to throw stones at Wolf so he feels better about getting one to him. I felt like abandoning all of that and demonstrating, how he actually behaves if I were to push him on it. If you saw Booksmarts trying the way he does with his friends in private, what does that look like? I don't think he was looking very good. And that's me being incredibly patient, not talking over him and doing other things. So
Huh? What's going on?